In this video, I wanted to take you through Minimal Audio's Morph EQ. I was introduced to Minimal's work through their amazing Rift distortion plugin, which I still use all the time, so I was certainly excited to check out this device. Morph EQ fills a unique role in the EQ landscape, as it's an EQ all about easy, animated filter movement with a fast and intuitive workflow. Normally, to do anything of this complexity, it would involve quite a bit of manual automation, recording automation, or limited racks. For example, in the past, I'd have to manually automate or record changes to parameters such as frequency, Q, volume, etc. Not only was it cumbersome, but if I wanted to create any small changes, it would be arduous to say the least. This is where Morph fills a unique role. It allows you to easily create, scale, edit, and morph unique filter movements. So let's dig into how this device works. Up top is your typical preset browser. One function I immediately love is the randomize preset button right here. This allows me to easily come up with glitchy sound design by quickly jumping through this while mangling all the parameters. While we're at the top, there's also this tooltip function here. So if after this tutorial you forget something, you can just hover your mouse over it and learn how it works. Starting with a fresh preset, to add a filter point, simply double click to add one in and right click to remove one. Clicking the inside of a point allows you to move it across the spectrum, while clicking the outer ring allows you to draw a morph path. We'll come back to this morph path, but this is how we will allow the EQ to morph around the frequency spectrum. You can command click to easily add more morph points. Morph paths can also be curved. So if you create a point, you can click it and curve it to create nice, smooth movement. You can even create symmetrical movement by creating a straight line for your morph path, curving it, creating another path back, and curving it the opposite direction. This creates a nice mirrored movement. Jumping ahead to the morph knob I just used, this is how you move the filter points along their morph path. If you have multiple points with multiple paths, they'll all move along their path at the same time. You can simply click to change between your different filters, or you can toggle between them down here. Besides that, you can change the filter's type, its frequency starting point, notice how the path moves along with it, its Q, its gain, although that won't apply to our notch here, but it would apply to a shelf, for example. And you can even change the stereo routing. So is this filter just affecting the left side, right side, stereo, or mid and side separately? There's also a handy undo function here, which not all plugins come with standard, so I'm always grateful for when one has one. Now next over is this shift knob, which will actually shift the frequency spectrum over for all the different filters. They'll perform their morph path wherever you shift it to. So notice how it'll still do that same movement, but if you shift it, it'll do it somewhere else. So this is nice because you can do big filter sweeps with the shift, while still doing your morph movement at the same time. This alone allows you just to make really nice, unique filter shapes and just move it around the spectrum, even without morphing it. Now the pinch function actually takes the filters and moves them closer together or further apart, depending on what part of the frequency spectrum they're on. This can be really nice for very vocal sounding processing. So if I were to add some notches and peaks here, and we were to pinch this, really nice for vocal sounding filters. Now the spread knob actually shifts and separates the left and the right channel. Now if this is too far, it creates too much stereo in my opinion. It's very obvious. However, if you do it in just subtle values, this is where I find it more useful to have just a slight discrepancy in the left and right channel, which can add a little bit of stereo width in there. Now the scale function here allows you to increase, reduce, or even invert the filter shape you've already created. So this can be nice if you just feel you've gone too far with something, you can reduce it. Or if you haven't gone far enough, you can increase it. You can really hear those peaks. Over on the left, you have the gain scaling, which combined with the scale can make things more pronounced or more subtle. And over here you have the Q scaling. So if I were to create a new preset and have this off, notice how no matter how I move this, the Q kind of maintains its shape. Where if we scale this, it'll pinch or soften depending on how we move it around. So if you want a more consistent and natural shape, this is on by default. There's also a filter solo knob here, so if you want to hear what it's affecting, this can also be fun for resampling and just taking out certain chunks of a sound. While we're still talking about the peaks, below the Q scale is the built-in saturator. You can go for a more gentle style, a hard clipping style, or nothing at all. But this combined with the massive peaks turns this into a sound design behemoth. Let's put it on the hard style. And let's get some big peaks. And let's enhance the scale. See how we can start to get that extra crunch out of it? So we can really start to use this to our advantage and get some just wacky sound design. It can also just be nice to turn this on at the end and just have some sort of saturation limiter to prevent things from going out and peaking too high. Now to the left here, you can actually decide whether all of this is happening in series or parallel. So what that means is by default, when things are in series, they're happening one into one another. This is especially obvious when you have something like this low pass. And a high pass, and eventually you cut out the entire sound. If it's in parallel, you can have the high pass and the low pass. Running at the same time. Versus series where everything gets cut out, parallel allows you to stack. That can be really nice for things like low pass, high pass, band pass. And then lastly, at the bottom, you have your input value, output value, and a dry wet value. That's really all there is to it. It's super easy, super intuitive. Before ending though, I want to show you a fun way in Ableton you can turn this into a real sound design beast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a default preset. I'm going to add 3 filter shapes in, and let's just quickly create a path for all of them. Again, super fast, very easy to do. Now I'm going to go into Ableton's effects and I'm going to grab their Max for Live device randomizer. I'm going to map this to this device. And the only thing I'm going to toggle off about it is I don't want it to affect the input. So let's turn that off so the input's always up. And notice how it just changes all these effects for me at once. So I could do this to one single preset I have to just resample and get really cool filter movement. Or I can start to shuffle this. Again, this is just all on a saw wave. Let's even speed this up. So it can just be a really nice way to get random filter movement on any sound really quickly, really easily. Resample, and then you got some fun movement. Easy as that. Plus it's kind of fun to look at. So sit back, randomize, enjoy the show, and have fun with Morph EQ.